Hey everybody, hope you're having a wonderful day out there today. And for today, we're gonna go ahead and do another installment of Car Clubs 101. And specifically, we're gonna be talking about car shows and what's involved in holding a car show. So over the years with my various car clubs that I've been part of and other aspects of the car community, I've either helped put on or put on more than a dozen car shows ranging in size from a couple dozen cars all the way up to several hundred cars. And so I definitely have a good idea on what's involved in making a successful car show and all the amount of work that goes into putting on a car show. So first thing that you want to do is you got to figure out what types of cars you're going to have at your car show. Is it going to be a free-for-all open to anything and everything? Are you going to be specific on like a certain brand or certain models of cars? You need to first narrow down what type of cars you want to have. And then you need to also decide how big of an event do you want it to be? Do you want it to be something small? Do you want it to be something large, something in between? And from there you can start figuring out other things like, are you going to need to have multiple classes of cars for your awards? Are you going to need to have awards? Are you going to have goodie bags? And there's a lot of different parts that you have to consider. And the most important part, of course, has to be your venue. So with your venue, there's definitely a handful of things you need to consider. One is, what's the capacity of that venue? How many cars can you hold successfully without being overcrowded? Is it a venue that you love to go to but you can only hold like 20 cars, but you really want to have an event that's like 75 or 100 cars? You need to have those numbers match up. So from there, you also need to plan on, when you're doing your capacity for your venue, always plan on extra space above that of what you think you're going to get for your car show, because the last thing you want to do is reach your max capacity and not have any room for additional overflow. And from there, you also need to take into consideration your entrance and exit points to the car show. Is it going to be one of those things where it's easy on, easy off to get in and out of? Are you going to have to worry about backing up cars down the street on a busy intersection? These are things you definitely need to consider, because if you've got a big car show, you got like 200 cars and everybody's showing up at once, you don't want people backed up a mile down the road. So you got to take that into consideration, so that way you can make sure your flow of traffic and getting everybody into the car show seamlessly happens really efficiently. So you also need to consider what the requirements are of the property owner. So when you talk to the owners of the property, you need to find out things like, are they going to require special security? Are they going to require certain liability insurance? And there's a lot of different factors that you need to find out. So when you choose your venue, talk to the property owners and find out what type of requirements they have. Because there might be things that cost you additional funds in addition to the cost of using the actual property that you're gonna have to factor in with your registration fees. So that's another thing you also have to figure out, is what's it gonna cost for your registration fee for your event? Is it gonna be a free event? If so, are you gonna get sponsors? Because otherwise that money's gotta come from somewhere. Because some venues charge money, certain facilities require costs, different insurances. If you're gonna have trophies, those awards cost. And you need to definitely take into consideration what type of a budget you're going to put together for this event. And then you also need to consider with the venue that you're going to have the car show at, does it already have restrooms, or do you need to have porta potties brought in to have during the event? Do they have trash cans there that you can utilize, or do you need to bring in trash cans and have trash service for the event? And then, of course, like I mentioned earlier, are you going to need security for this event? And there's a lot of factors on just the venue side alone that you need to be taking into consideration when you're setting up to have a car show. And one of the bigger events that we used to do with the Mopar Alley car show, we had to get the venue. The venue had fees for using the place. We had to get our additional trash cans. We had to have additional restrooms. We had to get porta potties brought in, had the trash service taken care of. Some of them required us higher security, require a certain amount of liability insurance, and there were a ton of things that we had to factor in. And then from there, we were also able to figure out what our budget was going to be. And then of course there are other things you need to rent, like pop-ups and tables and chairs, and there was a lot of factors and a lot of moving parts to set up a show. For the bigger shows that I did with Mopar Alley, we literally spent an entire year prepping and getting everything ready for the car show. The car show happened in June. the next day, after everything was torn down and done, we're starting planning for the following year because it takes that long. There were that many moving components. Now, some of the smaller shows that I've done with car dealerships like Norman and Chrysler, we went ahead and it took us like 3 or 4 months worth of prep work, and it was a smaller scale event, and we were able to do things at the dealer. So working with the dealership, we were able to pull off an amazing show. I think we did it 5 years in a row and had over 100 cars each year. And of course, there were less moving parts than we had with the Mopar Alley show, but there still is a lot going on and having to coordinate all of that over the course of several months. So from there, with your registration fees, you need to, in addition to all the stuff associated with the venue, you also need to take into consideration things like your trophies, if you're doing goodie bags and there's special gifts you're putting in for everybody to attend, and you need to factor all that in as well. Now, the nice thing with like goodie bags is you can reach out to all these different vendors, like your car detailing products companies, your parts manufacturers, and reach out to them and say, hey, you're putting on a show, is there stuff, promotional stuff that you can send out? And usually, in the past at least, the different companies have been really great about sending out promotional stuff that you can put in goodie bags to be able to hand out to all the participants. And so that has worked out pretty well. It usually results in a minimal or no cost for you to put on for the event. And then the participants show up and they get this goodie bag that has like some detailed products in it and some different part stickers and stuff and different brochures, and it usually works out pretty well. Now, from there, another thing you need to figure out is on the registration side. Are you gonna have just day of show registration, or are you gonna have pre-registration? Now, the nice thing about having the pre-registration is it gives you an idea of how big the event is going to be leading up to the event. And so historically, for most all the events that we've done, we've typically done a combination of both pre-registration and day of show registration. Now, in the case of like with the show at Norman's, we were usually reached at max capacity around 115, 120 cars. And so we ended up having pre-registered over 100 cars by the time the show happened, and so day of show registration was almost non-existent because we were already at max capacity. And it's just limitations due to the size of the venue. But it was a great show, and we did it for 5 years, and it was an absolute blast. And so that's definitely something you need to be taking into consideration. So from there, you also need to think about your food. Are you gonna have food trucks come in? Are you gonna have a food booth like at a fair? Are you gonna have, is your little venue close enough to different places where people can go and get food? And these are more things that you need to be taken into consideration. And I've done events where we've barbecued and sold food products. If you do that, you also have to look at getting things like food permits and and those are of course county and city specific, so you're gonna have to check into local requirements if you're gonna be doing food on your own. If you're gonna have a food truck come in or something like that, or a caterer, they have all of that taken care of on their end, so you don't have to worry about that. So it's just more things you need to be taking into consideration. So another thing you have to do, of course, thinking about is, are you gonna be doing any charitable donations? Is your event that you're holding gonna be benefiting a charity? And if so, you can look at different ways of have part of your registration fee go to your charity donations. You have raffles, you have 50-50 drawings. There's a wide variety of things you can do in order to generate revenue to provide to a charity. And that's something you need to be considering when you're gonna be putting on a car show. So from there, you also need to be thinking about, are you gonna have any vendors there? Are you gonna have different manufacturers come out, have parts for sale, showcase what they offer for the types of cars that you have in attendance? And depending on the size of the event and where you're located, it may be easier to get vendors to come out. Now, of course, if you're in the middle of nowhere and none of the manufacturers of parts for your for your cars are anywhere remotely close, the chance of getting them to come out is probably pretty small. But don't let that discourage you from trying, because the worst thing anybody can tell you is no. So it's always one of those things you want to just reach out and just keep grinding and try and get as many people to come to your event, and as well as vendors. So And then of course, as I mentioned earlier, another thing you want to look at is show sponsors. When you start getting into bigger events and having a lot of people in attendance and things like that, and you start having more and more operational costs, you need to start looking at having sponsors for the event, whether that be a local dealership or another company that's that supports you and your types of cars, someone you know that has a company, things like that. And there's a lot of different ways to go about getting sponsors, and they don't have to just be monetary sponsors. They could be sponsors that provide equipment and things to help with the show. So you got to get creative when it comes to marketing and getting sponsors and vendors and things like that to come out to attend your event. So of course, this also leads into your marketing. What are you going to do to get the word out about your event? Now with social media, it's a lot easier. And you've got things like Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, TikTok now, and the list goes on and on for all the different platforms for ways you can get your word out about your event. And of course, with your forums for your specific cars and stuff like that, and there's so many ways to reach out. And that's something we've always done, is we've put together really nice event flyers and then gone ahead and made PDF, JPEG copies, had some printed up to put at local auto parts store windows and stuff, and reach out to all the different aspects of social media, all the various platforms, and get the word out to as many people as possible. Because the more people that see your event, the better of chance you're gonna have it as a successful show and getting a large attendance. So, and of course, one of the biggest cornerstones to making any event successful are the volunteers. You're gonna need a lot of help to put on a successful show, especially if you're gonna get into, you're having triple digit attendance in number of vehicles or even quadruple digits. And so the more people you can have come out and help, the easier your event's gonna be and a lot smoother it's gonna go. We've had some of the larger events, we get literally dozens of volunteers to help because there's just so much to do, and the more people you have, the better it is to get all the work done and make sure everything goes smoothly. So those are some of my insights on how to have a successful car show. If you have any specific questions on how to make an event successful that I didn't cover here in this video, go ahead and put those in the comment section below. I definitely read all the comments, and I am more than willing to help answer any questions you could possibly have about holding a car show, because like I said, I've literally put on dozens of events and worked on so many events in the past that I've got a really good foundation on what it takes to have a successful event. So that's today's video. I hope you found this information useful and helpful as always. If you did, smash that like button, give us a thumbs up. That way YouTube's algorithm helps get our videos out there to more people. And as always, if you want to be kept up to date of all my future videos, don't forget to smash that subscribe button down below and ring that notification bell as well, so that way YouTube will notify you of all of my videos I do in the future. And as always guys, I will see you the next video.